Lancers Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
If we are doing better at the moment, why doesn't it feel a lot better? Is it just me being miserable, or does anyone else feel that? Neil?
I think they were just so bad to start with. It's just taken us a while to get used to maybe that we're not that bad. I'll just put it down to give me a few more wins and I might cheer up.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe it's just because I'm not sure whether it's going to keep up. But actually, if you look at our form, it's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not really that into them at the moment, I think. Because when you look at the facts, it's kind of... They're doing well. They're unbeaten at home. They're starting to score a few goals and keeping some clean sheets. Yes, it's all good. But I don't have the same lust for them like I did last year. Because it was just so beautiful last year.
No, and as Paul has pointed out to me recently, I got a text off Paul the other day that just said, "When did you stop giving a fuck?" And my interest in Carv has waned significantly this season. I really do feel it's ground me down a little bit too much now, but we'll plough on regardless. Does anybody have a moment of the week that they care to throw in? Let's start with Paul.
Paul. Go on, Paul.
Start with me. The re-emergence of Lee Burge is really nice to see. I didn't really have any issues with him before he got dropped. Never really saw the reason why people slacked him off as much as they did. He's an alright keeper. I don't think he's any better or worse than Reece Charles Cook. It's just he made a couple of really good saves. He seems to have come in as the team's hit some sort of form. Jordan Willis surely owes him his win bonus. So I think it's just nice to see Lee Burge not being as bad as people assumed he was going to be. And it's just quite nice.
Will you get behind my campaign to formally call it the Reburgence?
No.
Why not?
He never gets behind it.
That's awful.
It's not.
Although saying that, he wasn't that bad when he got dropped. Or was he dropped? No, he was injured, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah.
And Charles Cook came in. So he was kind of unlucky, because we were winning anyway. Reece Charles Cook came in and got that run of clean sheets in spite of him. They were just, they were hardly shooting. So I don't feel like he's done anything wrong for us, has he? He's just come back in and he's showing that he's a good keeper.
Someone summed him up quite nicely on Saturday. I can't remember who it was. We were saying, he's come back in, he's done all right, and blah, 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 blah. And then it sort of was one of the things where you were praising him, and then there was maybe a second silence, and the person just went, he's obviously never going to fucking play above League One, though. And you're kind of like, yeah, I guess that's where he's at, isn't he? He's Sideways Sammy wrote a really good piece about Jamie Sterry that was basically just an audible shrug. And I kind of feel the same way about Lee Burge. He's a perfectly passable League One keeper for my money. I think he's okay. I don't think he deserved the criticism he got when he got it, but I don't think that makes him Banks either. He's just all right, isn't he?
Well, the thing is, he's still only, 22, 23?
Yeah.
He hasn't probably played 50 games yet. So, keepers, we all know, don't mature till they're in their mid-20s. I mean, even what's-his-face at Chelsea, who was the world's greatest goalkeeper for a while, is now barely talked about in glowing terms.
He's on the scrap heap, mate.
And David De Gea was written off in his first season at Man United. It's like keepers are just... It's one of those, you make one fuck-up and that's all anyone remembers, and I think people still haven't quite forgiven him for the Worcester game, how many decades ago that was.
Yeah.
And it's just like, he's matured. I mean, I said, he made some really... He was the reason we didn't go in 1 or 2-0 down at half-time. And... That's all we've discussed this in the past. Keepers are like every other player. If they're having a good game, it's not, the keeper was brilliant. It's like, he's had a really good game. He deserves the credit. And I still saw, what's his face, who does the Lonely Season one. It's like, what about his kicking? And it's like, well, yeah, his kicking his distribution isn't the best in the world, but it's a bit like one of those things. I like my goalkeepers to be able to save the ball if it's going in the back of the net. And that's what he did. Yeah, his kicking's a bit erratic, but we're not looking to play like Barcelona or Man City. We're looking to play like a League One side. He's adequate at that.
I think that's fair enough. Neil, moment of the week.
It may have been when Paul just called Laurie what's his face. That was quite good.
Yeah, Laurie,
friend of the show,
I have no friends, Neil. Don't worry about it.
That was pretty good. No, my moment of the week is general, generic people. I've lived a nomadic existence at the Rico in the last few years. I keep moving seats and that, and I get to know, sort of introvertly people around me. I just sit there and listen to them, and I quite enjoy them, and I get used to it. But I'm now sat amongst a lot of people who I don't enjoy. And the other game was it Wednesday night or Tuesday night? It was just real hard work just to sit there and listen to people who... I feel like I disagreed with everything they said. It was just... I just can't understand the mindset of fans. And I understand it's pantomime, and I expect pantomime when I'm at the football. But the fact that Ched Evans was on the pitch and he got no grief, given all the ethical nonsense that's gone on with him, and yet Jody Jones was given the most dog's abuse from this guy behind me all game long. And it was really annoying abuse, because I don't mind if someone doesn't like a player. It happens. You don't fancy him. But at least be a little bit fair. But what he was doing was completely ignoring every single time Jody Jones did anything good, which was sort of half the time. But then when he did something which wasn't what he wanted to do, not even bad, just what we didn't want him to do, he would go absolutely mad. And it's just, I can't stand that. And I had to put up with that all game long, or for as long as Jody Jones was on the pitch. Just this guy constantly berating Jody Jones. And at one point, we had Willis and someone else on the verge of coming off because they were injured. And this guy was still shouting, "Get Jones off! Get Jones off!" And I was just thinking, yeah, that's a sensible decision, isn't it? Yeah, you've got Willis with a broken leg, but no, let's take Jody Jones off after 30 minutes. It's just... I'm not enjoying my new seat. That's basically the point.
So you should have come and sat with us. In the first half, we discussed what me and Jez do for a living, as we haven't discussed it in about 8 years. We discussed where Pritchard was, and when Pritchard told that, we discussed his holiday to Mexico. And just, how everyone got on Saturday, having a drink, barely, the football barely featured for the first 45. And to be fair to Jody Jones, every time he did something wrong, no one really slagged him off. Jimbo would just say, "I told you, the guy's thick." And it'd be like, yeah. And then someone else would do something stupid, and it was like, he's pretty thick. And we'd carry on discussing non-football stuff, because the first 45 minutes of that game, he's up there with some of the worst football I've ever seen. And I was saying like this earlier, so I've seen Coventry like 3-0 down at half-time. But at least the opposition were good enough to score 3 goals. Chesterfield weren't even good enough to score a couple of sitters we gave them, because that's how shit Chesterfield were. And we were and we were so bad, we were gifting Chesterfield chances to score.
Were we so bad?
Oh, the first half was just dull. The front four,
dull, yeah.
The front four were all awful, absolutely awful. It was like not one of them could control a ball. It was just like, this is dire. And then luckily, second half we looked slightly better, but the first 45 minutes, the standard of football was just insultingly bad.
How did we set up last night? Oh, not last night, sorry, on Tuesday.
It looked like 4-4-2 more than 4.
Yeah,
I know, because we had Carl Reid and Jody Jones. So 4-2-4. No, it was 4-4-2. They were playing on the wings, in midfield wings.
Yeah.
And it was just, and Tudguy, I'm not really sure where Tudguy was meant to be. I mean, I know the last time we did this, I sort of defended Danny Agai. Danny Agai was awful. Tudguy was just barely, non-existent. Carl Reid going down dead ends in the first half, and Jody Jones was erratic, to put it nicely.
But I'm glad you said that Agai was awful, because he was awful in the worst possible way, in that everything he did was bad, and he was really sort of inactive as well. So he didn't seem to have any sort of keenness to get involved in the game at all. So, and yet, I don't want people to have a go at players, but at least be fair. I mean, you've got Jody Jones, who we know he had a hit-and-miss game and he was making bad passes and that sort of stuff, but he was in the match. He was still a threat because they were scared stiff of his pace. But he was just getting grief from everybody around me. And yet Aguiar, he was a waste of time. He just didn't have any sort of energy or any sort of desire to involve himself in the match. And when he did, I mean, for someone his size, how he can't hold off a player, I don't know. It's really wound me up now. It's not good enough.
But I think...
Neil, it goes back to one of my favourite sayings. In football, it's better to be on the pitch, do nothing, and be shit than it is.
Absolutely.
To try and do things and it not work. And
better for your reputation. Put it there, yeah.
Yeah, because Danny Aggai did nothing all game, and it was like he was as bad as Tud Guy. There was no, Tud Guy was awful. It's like, well, he was no better or worse. But because Jody Jones got on the ball and then kept failing with his final touch, like, someone rang. Sorry, I know we're going on to the game, and Joey's got to give his moment of the week and that chat.
Oh, I forgot about
that. But someone on the phone was like, "Oh, Kyle Reid was phenomenal," and you were like, for the first 60 minutes he was garbage. For the last 30 minutes, yeah, he kept beating his man. All of his crosses were shit. Every single one of them was shit. Like, and it comes to something when Lewis Page, the only time in the entire second half he got into a decent position, he didn't aimlessly cross the ball like Carl Reid had done all game. He actually picked out a player running onto the ball in Andy Rose. Now, I'm not Lewis Page's biggest fan, but at least he had the intelligence not to just knock in the same cross that Carl Reid had been trying all fucking half. Like, Carl, just phenomenal. It's like the guy's dumb as fuck, and his final ball is shocking. It's like, doesn't matter how many times you skin your fullback. If every time you've got the opportunity to do something with it, you don't actually create a chance, then I'm sorry, you're having a bad game.
People would argue that's what Jody Jones did, though.
I'm not saying Jody Jones had a good game either.
I do see where you're coming from, because it gets frustrating, doesn't it? I mean, it was such a weird match, because watching it from my perspective, I didn't think it was as dreadful as kind of a lot of people seem to think. But I just think there's a lot of anxiety around the stadium, and it's kind of like, not all games can be the same. You can't score in the first half of every single match, and not that we look particularly likely, but it seemed like that was the catalyst for everybody just to go mad, because we hadn't scored in the first half. It was suddenly, that was an absolutely dreadful first half, and now anything's better in the second. And it turns out it was better in the second. But I think you're a little bit harsh on Reid, just because I think it wasn't as easy just to beat his man. That guy was a bit of an athlete, and he had him by the end of it, and I was feeling a lot better about Reid by the end of the match.
But I say, if he'd have done something, like we were discussing it, because it was right in front of us, and it was at one point he really had the opportunity to just drive at the goal. He didn't have to cross. He was in a bit of space, and it's like, no, what you need to do is go to the next player, commit him, because then you really open it up. And he just crossed aimlessly again, and you were like, you might as well have lost the ball in the tackle every time to what you've actually achieved with your actual ball. And like, I think the biggest thing for me is it just proved that tactics mean so much. The first half and the first 60 minutes when we were playing 4-2-4 or 4-4-2 or whatever we were doing, didn't work. Biggie was too deep because he was playing in the midfield too, so he was basically non-existent. And it was like, this isn't working. You can see this isn't working. We went to 4-3-3, and suddenly Biggie was to the left of Stevenson, so he was sort of given a bit more license to press up, so he could press the ball higher up. So Biggie was more involved. Carl Reid was suddenly sort of freed a bit more to go. He didn't have to trap back as much. So yeah, he was more higher up against his fullback. It brought Aggai more into the game because he didn't have Tudguy to hide behind. And Ramirez came on, and the thing about Ramirez is that he's always available for a pass, and not only that, he's likely to pass it to another teammate. And he brought Sterry into the game, so we were actually attacking with more players. But it was like, I didn't go to Warsaw, I didn't see the Rochdale game either, but like from what I've seen recently, we're playing 4-3-3, and it's worked. It's worked because the midfield three have dominated the opposition. And he went to 4-2-4, and it's like, this isn't... And to be fair to Mark Venus, he came out and went, hands up, I got the tactics wrong, it didn't work.
So that was an active change then? He made that I didn't know why he changed it. I thought it was just, was he resting someone, was he trying something different?
Well, I think the problem is, because of the squad Tony Mowbray bought, we only have like 5 central midfielders. Gadjev's injured, McCann's injured, and Andy Rose is coming back from injury. So he obviously didn't want to play him again. So it was a case of that left him with 2 central midfielders. So he went back to 4-2 or 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2 or whatever he did, because his options were limited by the shit squad he's been left with. I'm sure if he'd have had another central midfielder, he'd have stayed with 4-3-3. Well, I'm assuming he would have done, because if you look at the results, 4-3-3 is working because of the sort of... I said, Biggie, I don't think he's a midfield 2 type guy. He needs to be able to go forward, because that's where he's at his best. He's best. He's trying to win the ball back.
But I think he's the same argument as is going round about Paul Pogba at the moment. Is I think what you want is in Biggie is the ability to be a little bit indisciplined. And strangely, you expect that sort of roaminess with like a number 10 type player, almost like a free roll as such. But actually, you want Biggie doing that both defensively and offensively. And I think that there's a temptation to think of those players as very defined and structured. And he's not. When he's at his best, he's a fucking lunatic who runs everywhere. But that means he's out of position unless he's got 2 people next to him. I agree with you. I don't want to see him in a 2-man midfield. I think Stevenson is stable. And I think at our best, we've got your man, you know what I mean? McCann, who are level-headed, good, solid midfielders next to him. Yeah. And I just don't. I completely agree with you. I don't think he's a 2-man midfield player, is he?
He's a laugh, though, isn't he? Quite like watching Biggie.
I fucking love it.
Funny. He has got a mistake, a lot of dreadful mistake in him every single game, and I find myself forgiving him every single game. Just it doesn't matter, it's Biggie, but I shouldn't, because it's every single game he'll do something which is utterly ludicrous, and not just like a bad tackle, but just a pass where he's looking at the other player and then he just passes it to him. You're like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do, Biggie. He's not on your team, and he just does it anyway.
Yeah,
that's actually what Jordan Willis did. He did that dreadful pass at one point, but he does that all the time as well. Jordan Willis.
If Jordan Willis could pass, or if it's like Jordan Willis could pass, he'd be a very good centre half. If Jordan Willis had the pace of me, we would probably have conceded 4 or 5 more goals in the last couple of games, because on the second half, was it him or Jerry Sterry passable straight to the Chesterfield player?
Yeah, definitely Jordan Willis.
And then I don't know if you've seen the highlights of this, Joey. And then basically, I think it was Ched Evans, but it might not have been. And he was up against Turnbull, and you're like, all Turnbull has to do now is he's quite a long way from goal, so just jockey him. And Turnbull sold himself ridiculously easy. But luckily, because Jordan Willis can do the 100 metres in about 9 seconds, he managed to recover and get a covering tackle across, and they missed the opportunity. But you were like, if you were slow, we'd have been fucked then, because your pass was awful. Jordan Turnbull's decision to just try and win the ball back was horrific. But because you're so quick, you've made that situation not look quite as bad as it was. And like the one in the first half, where he underhit a 5-yard pass to Jerry Sterry by about 4.5 foot.
Did he even leave his own foot?
I was just like, when you're watching it going, how can you miss? Oh my life. And then luckily, I said Lee Burge made a wonder save. And then they had another opportunity, and out of nowhere comes everyone's favourite last-ditch tackle man, Jordan Willis. And Jimbo just turned to me and went, well, that sums him up in like 30 seconds of play, doesn't it? He can't pass. But if you need someone to do a last-ditch tackle, it's Jordan Willis. And that's basically what he seems to be doing at the moment.
He's in prime Richard Keogh form, isn't he?
That's a great example, actually. Yeah, he's just like, he turns into a horse, doesn't he? Like, I am running, and it just bang, tackle.
He's got the captaincy, he's kind of, everyone's clapping because he's made a last-ditch tackle, but it's a last-ditch tackle that he's made because he's just kicked the ball at his own face.
It's the Richard Shaw. It's like, the reason you've done last-ditch tackles because you were out of position for the original build-up play, and now you've had to do a last-ditch tackle. Rio Ferdinand didn't do last-ditch tackles because he was in the right position to start off with.
Yeah, you're right. He's boring. It's not.
It's a lot more exciting to have Jordan Willis flying across the pitch, trying to save the shot with his face.
Yeah.
But
I tell you what, I prefer laughing about this stuff because we've still won than imagine if this stuff hadn't gone for us. Bloody hell, you'd be livid, wouldn't you, if Jordan Willis was doing this stuff and we were losing?
Yeah.
Oh, easy.
My question to you, Neil, is, given our recent form and something that you talked about, Paul, which was the sort of poor squad, I think Venus has had 7 games now. What's your verdict so far?
My verdict so far is that actually the squad, when the first 11's not playing too badly, is actually quite good. When you look at the other day, you had Lemire, Sordell, Wright, Ricketts, Charles Cook, Rose. I don't know I'm putting Charles Cook in there because you're never really going to bring him on, but you've got players there who you'd imagine can come on and fit into the team quite nicely. So from that perspective, when they're playing all, not to their capability, because I don't think the other day was particularly what they can do, but I think when they're playing okay, we've got a decent squad, that's fine. We're now starting to win, which obviously shows what we can do as a team. And also, I think the key thing, and this is the thing I've noticed more and more this season, is how bad most of the other teams in this league are. And that's where I'm kind of benchmarking us now. When I can't think of too many games that I've seen this year where, even when we've lost, I felt like the other team was particularly better than us or played better than us. And it's just, I think we keep doing what we're doing. Players like Carl Reed keep at least running at players. Players like Sordell, I think he's doing really well, actually. Sordell, he's coming to his own last month. And even Andy Rose, who's just come back and scored 2 in 2. And I will never know what Andy Rose is as a footballer.
You've got to love him.
Exactly. I've got no issue with Andy Rose being in that team if he keeps scoring goals and if he keeps charging forward all the time. It is inexplicable what he's doing on the football pitch because he just doesn't fit anywhere, and yet he's useful. And that's what I love about football sometimes, because it's just, we can spend all, hours and hours looking at tactics and methods and, perfect players and perfect positions. And then sometimes you just get big old Andy Rose coming on the pitch, standing in the number 10.5 position and just getting goals and setting stuff up and just being a bloody menace. And
it's desire with Andy Rose, isn't it?
I think it's
it's nice, isn't it? It's useful when you've got someone who cares.
Yeah, I think that's one of them. Go on, Paul.
Well, it's just the fact that any other player could be making those breaks into the box. They just don't, but he does, and he just almost like Frank Lampard, but obviously, not as good as Frank Lampard. But he just, and I think because he's like 6'3" or whatever, players like that arriving late into the box just make things more awkward. Yeah. Like, his goal was, I think he basically shin-knee volleyed it into the back of the net. But because he was there...
Crucially, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like he's just, I don't know, he's just a very... I don't want him to be involved in the game at all until the ball enters the 18-yard box.
That'll do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't want him to play up front. Like, don't get me wrong, it's like, Andy Rose scores goals, we must have him number 9. No, keep him in midfield. Just don't let him touch the ball until the ball's in the box.
Go on.
But it's just like, going back to your question, I still don't rate any of our back four. I still haven't seen any of them. I mean, Lewis Page got sent off, but he did 3 of those tackles on Tuesday. One of them was his first one, he didn't get booked for, was basically a rugby tackle. And you were like...
What the fuck was he playing at, getting sent off in the 93rd minute of a game? Exactly.
And bloody got a round of applause.
Wank.
You've got Ched Evans there being rude against, just fucking Lewis Page gets himself sent off with a minute to go for absolutely no reason at all.
Bewildering.
And he gets the clap.
Unless someone does something like, when Ben Thatcher elbowed Nicky Summerby in the face?
Yeah.
If I'd have been a supporter, I think he played for Wimbledon at the time, I would have clapped him off the pitch. If you're going to get sent off for smacking someone in the face, let it be Nicky Summerby. But don't get sent off for a needless tackle in the 93rd minute. It's just like, just don't do it. But
someone said well, it's all right because he'll only miss the cup game. He probably did it on purpose. And it's like, well, he could have not got sent off, and it doesn't really matter. It wasn't like he was going to miss. It was going to cause him to miss another game. He would just stay on the pitch. It's fine.
And for what it's worth, I think, without looking, it was at Man City, and I think it was Pedro Mendes was the recipient, Paul.
No, he did 2.
I did 2?
He did Pedro Mendes, but he also did Nicky Summerby.
Oh, did he? Oh, fair play.
Yeah, because that's why he's a bit of a hero.
Yeah, I remember Summerby.
Yeah, because I think that the Pedro Mendes one was really nasty.
It was,
but I think the Summerby one was sort of almost off the pitch. And he just nailed him in the face, and you were like, he deserves that.
Yeah. Yeah,
You and Chris Makin.
Yeah, we don't condone violence in this parish, do we? Unless it's against Nicky.
Yes, we do. We really do.
Yeah.
Unless it's against my daughter, like the girl across the road who took a swinging.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Luckily, Mary doesn't really pay attention.
You got to remember as well that Paul lives in Compton, so it's.
Me and Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
Went to school offered.
You live on the wrong side of Sealand Drive, don't you? Okay. What else have we got to talk about with...
So, Joey, what's your moment of the week?
Yeah. Well, who cares, eh? My moment of the week, strangely enough, was actually going to be Andy Rose appearing in the box. Funnily enough, when you were saying desire, and we were about to make the same point, and I'll make it again needlessly... when he came off and Jody Jones came on Saturday, it was really, really palpable that Jones had a really good 20-minute cameo. All he did was drive towards the box with the ball at his feet to deliver it to no one because there was no one there. And it's I worry sometimes, not that it matters, about sounding like a footballing Neanderthal because I often talk about quite basic stuff, but I don't think football is as basic as throw people in the box, but I do think it's as basic as you need to have a presence in the box all the time when you've got the ball, and I think we do such a poor job of that consistently. I mean, ever since I've been going to watch Cov, it seems to be something that we do poorly, and when we do it right, we reap such incredible rewards for it. And that is why I've had a go at strikers like McGoldrick in the past, which obviously turned out to be wildly, unfathomably bad. But that Andy Rose, you hit the nail on the head, is a player who doesn't appear to add any or much value, which is horrendously unfair. I apologise, Andy Rose, except the fact that he's a menace. And I just think I love Ruben Lemiras. I absolutely adore Ruben Lemiras, but I think he massively unbalances that front three. I don't think he's a wide player at all, really. And there's part of me that was thinking, I wonder while McCann's out, whether what you'd smart thing to do would be is to play a middle three of Lemiras, Bigaramana and Stevenson. And again, it's no, because the thing with McCann that looked so impressive was that he was intelligent enough that he knew how to break. And that he broke all the time against Port Vale and ultimately scored. And that Lemiras, for all of his qualities, he refuses to get in the box. He just doesn't do it. It's just I can't remember what game it was last season. I want to say Scunthorpe maybe, but maybe Walsall again, where he just floated on the edge of the box, and you just think, just drive in, just get in, and you don't have to be the one playing the pass all the time. If you haven't got the ball, you can't make a pass. And as much as I love him, he won't get in there. So my moment of the meet was going to be just the fact that Andy Rose just gambles, like you say, and just goes. Yeah. And a player like that has got the football cliche alert, but the engine to get up and down the pitch. I don't find that he gets found out defensively because he spends his time in the box.
You know how else he spends his time at half time as well? This is what sums him up brilliantly. It's like at half time, they're all doing their training and stuff. There was a group of 4 of them, including Reece Charles Cook, like doing some sort of Nike advert, all sorts of flicks and tricks. And then out the corner of your eye, you see Andy Rose doing shuttle runs up and down the goal line. He's like, fuck this, I'm not playing football, I'm running. And he just spent like 10 minutes just running up and down. And fair play to him, he didn't care about the ball, he just cares about running.
Yeah, I mean, if you're him, the last thing you want fans seeing is you touching the ball. That's not his game, is it? Him, in his mind, him running up and down is his flicks and tricks, isn't it?
That's his game, which is why I wonder what the hell Reece Charles Cook was doing involved in that. It's like the other goalkeeper was there practicing his catching and stuff. No, he's in there doing his tricks and tricks, which he will use in the game, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But at least he'll keep Laurie happy because he can pass.
Oh, look at you. You first of all, you pretended not to know his name. Now there's more digs. What's this all anti-lonely season sentiment? Yeah.
I blame him for the fact we didn't get on the FBAs. I think
diluted our power.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I think we all agree that while Andy Rose might not be anyone's cup of tea, he's probably one of our favourite players at the moment because
I love him.
Yeah, he's just something different and someone who's someone who's making the best out of his limited ability, which is something always nice to see.
Do you know what's brilliant about football? Right, one of the things that's brilliant about football Ruben Ramirez and Andy Rose are both footballers.
Yeah. It's both their jobs.
They both do the same job, but you would never know. You mean one of them might as well be a dog for all it matters.
So here's a question for you. Do you think we'd still be in the bottom 4 if we still had Mowbray?
Yeah.
I'd
say unequivocally, yeah.
Yeah, something you just can't fix.
But obviously Venus has fixed it. So you think it was...
We all know how football works. It's momentum, it's mindset, it's culture, it's changing decisions. It's all these sort of things come together to make, which seems quite complicated at the time to Mowbray, actually can be quite easy. We see it a million times. You can have exactly the same team one day playing atrociously, and then the next day, because something clicks around the place, there's suddenly that extra percentage of energy or that decision, they're suddenly a bit more positive and they go for the attacking pass rather than passing it backwards, and it changes the whole dynamic of the team. There's also
a handful of potentially confirmation bias laden practical changes that he made that I think made a huge difference. One, if you look at the Experimental 361, that absolutely magnificent statistics website. Yes. They showed the number of changes in the team from match to match for us all the way through the season, and Mowbray's was on average something like 4, maybe 4.5, something like that, and Venus hasn't really changed the team. It's like 1 or something like that every week. It's a really stark, like obvious move to just try and not to rotate the team as much as possible. And curiously, he's actually brought the average age of the team down in doing so, which was Mowbray's other big thing. Was we've got boys against men. Actually, Venus has lowered the average age of the team, but has kept it consistent. That back 4, the one that we bemoaned, pretty regularly, has now started keeping a lot of clean sheets, and they're not any better as individuals. None of them have really stood out, bar Willis in spells. But that you kind of look at them now and go, well, at least you know each other. And there is something to be said for a consistent back 4 Definitely. Of that way.
But I say it's not just them two, it's also Biggie and Stevenson have been there pretty much week in, week out. So you've got a back sort of 7 there, if you include the keeper,
and I think
who are pretty uniform, aren't they? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what he does against... I know we're not really discussing Morecambe, but Biggie's suspended... And you would have thought that Stevenson could do with a break. But obviously there aren't the midfielders to bring in to drop both of them. It's a shame that Biggie's got to miss it through suspension. But at least... I was going to say that the same about those graphs as well. But it's also just... I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving back from Cov to Manchester. Almost wonder sometimes if Mowbray's... Because Mowbray still lived in Middlesbrough. If he just had a bit too much time to sort of think about things, almost overanalyzed everything, so was like continually trying to work out in his head what his best team was, instead of just sort of accepting the fact that maybe he'd already got it and didn't have to change it.
But he lived in Cov during the week, didn't he? He lived with Jamie Clapham in the flat during the week.
But you also... But you know what I mean? I wonder, because he also did have the trips up to Middlesbrough, however often he did it, whether or not he did. I think, but also living in a hotel or living away from your family is not the same as being at home.
Yeah.
Does that make? Because you don't really tune out because it's not a normal life. If you go home to your kids, it's like, well, there's no point in me thinking about football. I've got to deal with the kids.
But where does Venus live? I mean, apart from Venus, obviously.
Well, I'm assuming he lives somewhere nearby. I could be wrong, but you just get the thing, because he's a director and stuff, I assumed he'd probably moved his whole...
Yeah, but if you were a manager, you'd assume that you'd go and move there. He might not move there. He might not live there. He'd live in Cov.
No, but most of them don't live in Cov. Most of them live in Leamington, so maybe he does that.
Okay. But it's a fair point, though, yeah, but I don't know that he actually does live in Cov. We'll have to get him on one time, find out. I haven't really got anything to say about Walsall because you two quite eloquently took the Chesterfield game apart. I have already said that like I say, I love Lemurius. I just don't think he's the correct answer to one of those pieces in the 4-3-3. I think that I would prefer to see Jones come in a permanent role there and have Sordal move to number 9, who I just think week on week, I just like him more and more. I don't think he's amazing, but he's really winning me over as Marvin Sordal. I really
I agree.
Through good, honest, hard work and stuff,
and being better than Aguirre.
Yeah,
I know he's not playing the same position, but there's just little things that they're all holding the ball up. It makes a big difference because when your play is almost predicated on your striker being able to do that, and Sordal's really quite good at it. He gets the ball under control and he's not having to worry about. He's not worrying about the bloke behind him. He's just worried about. He knows he's strong enough to hold him off, and he's just keeping the ball. Whereas Aguirre seems so deposed with looking at the guy behind him, holding him off, that he just doesn't bother controlling the ball, and it's always coming off his shin or his knee or anything like that.
That guy reminds me a bit of Nuble, where I think I look at him as being a player who probably should be really good with his back to goal. And I think Daniel Aguirre sees himself as Lionel Messi. Yeah. And it's just like, use your height, your strength first. In the first half, he had a little run where he beat a couple of players. It was like, that was, quite decent. And then he ran into he either fell over or he was fouled in the inverted commas because he fell over. But it was like, you can actually take people on. We saw that against Bradford. He drifted past players. But he doesn't seem to stamp his authority on the game first. He seems to want to try and do the tricks first instead of sort of settling down. And sometimes the opposing defenders just find him quite easy because he doesn't always have the ball under control.
Yeah,
a bit like Akpom.
Yeah, very much so. And he's also he's also remarkably fortunate because it seems like at the start of games, defenders often look at him as if they were 13-year-olds looking over at the other side of the pitch and seeing bigger boys. Do you know what I mean?
He ain't 16.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's got a tash. But he just... But very quickly, I agree with you, Paul. He either won't pull the trigger or he won't hold a player off properly. And it's frustrating because there are times... I think there were glimpses against Bradford and glimpses against Port Vale where he looked really like he's got something... But what he hasn't got, definitely, is any stamina and really enough confidence. And I think it's a shame because I like the look of him, but I would get shot of him in January if I think there was even a bag of carrots or something as a possible replacement. The final thing I'll say about Walsall, I have seen one of the penalty shouts again. I think we should have had 2 penalties. I think the argument... I mean, Biggie... There's an argument to say that Biggie turns away for goal from the first one as he's trying to... But then he kind of has to go round the keeper. It's just... I think it's bollocks. I can't tell from the replay 100% whether he's touched him. It looks very much like he has to me. And the second one was pretty much identical. We talked about it off air before we started, Paul. You said that we should never have had the corner that we scored the first goal from last night. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was clearly a goal kick. And as I said, if you watch it back, it's a goal kick. The corner comes in, Andy Rose sort of gets a flick on it, and then the ball drops to Jordan Turnbull, who air kicks it. The ball hits their player on the leg, and then goes straight back to Jordan Turnbull's foot. It's like, that's just random luck. If Jordan Turnbull had actually hit the ball, it'd have hit the defender and gone anywhere else, but we got very lucky with that goal. These things happen, like as I said before, you got to weigh it. These things do even themselves out. Referees won't always get the decisions right, but they're likely to get it wrong in your favour. Yeah. It was so clearly a goal kick. You felt, the guy got booked, I think, because he was just bitching. It was like, well, it wasn't a goal, it wasn't a corner, it clearly wasn't, but, you got to take your opportunities when you can. It was the first time, I think it was the first corner that Andy Rose was on the pitch. And it was the first time in the entire game where we didn't actually hit the first man. So, all things went in our favour for that corner.
Yeah. And we also had an enormous slice of fortune. I mean, you can sum up the game against Walsall really, really easily. We had the run of the sort of overall play. So when you look at the stats, they're all very, very, very similar. But you had a sort of nominal sense of us being slightly more threatening, but they had the two best chances that they somehow spurned wide, but like really considerably wide both times. And as we were sort of 1-0 up just before they scored, there was a kind of impending sense of, really, it's kind of like justice for this to end 1-1. And when they scored in the way that they did, which I thought their goal was really, really nicely worked. I think Biggie switches off for Oshtima when he plays the 1-2. He didn't ever tracks the run, and I think that would have prevented it. But actually, it's a really nice passing move, and he scores a decent goal from range. And a very talented player, if we remember from Peterborough. And actually, when at full time, when it was 1-1, you kind of like, that's... sometimes you kind of look at a football match and go, that was the correct answer, even if it wasn't the answer that I wanted. It was a reasonably enjoyable game at times, but yeah, I can't know. It's 90 minutes that happened again. We're not going to talk about Morecambe, not for any sort of pathetic, childish protest, just because, I don't know, really, it's just Morecambe, isn't it? We are
Tell the truth, Joe, it's because you spent an hour revising everything about Wickham.
Well, yeah, that was what I was going to say. Let's now get to our in-depth Wickham review.
This is what me and Joe were just like. We've been planning this all day, me and Joey. We've literally, I think, John Gregory's still Wickham manager. Obviously, Wickham share their ground with Wasps. Yeah. So, the pitch might not be in the best condition because those rugby arseholes play there as well.
Yeah. Martin O'Neill's having a good time as manager there, I believe, with Tony Adams as manager. Gareth Ainsworth.
Oh, he's a good up-and-coming player, isn't he?
Rock and roll's Gareth Ainsworth, still, do you know what, Wickham? I don't know, and I don't care. I really don't. Have we got anything else, or shall we get this show on the road? No,
I think that's us done, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, it's at Neil Lamptey Show, or it's neillamteyshow@gmail.com. Thank you very much, Paul.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Bye.